Good morning, everyone. I apologize for the delayed start, but would you rise and join me with the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, welcome to the July 14th, 2009 meeting of the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors. We'll start right in with the agenda. We have announcements from last week. We had closed session on July 7th, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9C. Conference with legal counsel. This is regarding anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation, one case resulting in the board unanimously authorizing county counsel to initiate litigation against Ron Ashwanden and Pacific Bank. Okay, then there was a closed session pursuant to Code Section 54956.9. Conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, Ray Waller versus the Board of Supervisors of Calaveras County and all. Calaveras County Superior Court case number CV 35737, resulting in nothing to report. Then there was a closed session pursuant to Government Code Section, sounds familiar, 54957.6. Conference with Labor Negotiator, Director of Human Resources and Risk Management, Service Employees International Union Local 1021 SEIU and GSA, resulting in a continuance to July 9th, 2009 at 9:30. Then we had the closed session on July 9th. That closed session was held pursuant to that same code section, and conference with Labor Negotiator and the Human Resources, and it resulted in nothing to report. Then we have an addendum to today's agenda. We have an item number 26 that we'd like to add, I think, in the overall machinations here that will become item number 25, but this will be a closed session with legal counsel pursuant to Government Code 54956.9. Existing litigation, we have two cases to discuss today. One is Nemi versus Calaveras County, case number CV 35775, and Oakdale Irrigation District and South San Joaquin Irrigation District versus the County of Calaveras. That case number is CV 35081, and we'll be discussing those two cases with our county counsel. Hopefully we'll have board action on that. All right, now turning our attention to the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Before we get started, I would like to pull item 11. Mr. Roberts has withdrawn his claim, so that item will not be heard today.
Okay, directing our attention to right after 10 o'clock, item number 11, this is discussion and possible action on a minute order regarding a claim for tax refund filed by Alan B. Roberts. Supervisor Callaway is suggesting that is not necessary to discuss that item today. Is any action?
For the record, we had a written request from Mr. Allen by email yesterday asking that this be withdrawn.
Okay, Mr. Jones, does this require board action on taking this off? Or?
No.
Okay. All right, just for informational purposes. All right, thank you. Going back, bye, Leslie. Going back to the consent agenda, we have 6 items on the consent agenda this morning, and these items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They can be acted upon at one time by the board, but anyone with that wishes to pull an item off the agenda can do so, any member of the public or the board. So at this time I'd like to ask if there are items that wish to be removed. If not, yes, Mr. Clapp.
Number 4, please.
Okay, Mr. Clapp has requested removing of item number 4. Do we have a motion on the balance?
I'll move.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second for approval of the balance of the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There are none, so the action passes on a 4-0 with one absent. Okay, we have item number 4. This is a minute order approving a fee increase for driving under the influence program for fiscal year 0910. Behavioral Health is bringing this item to us.
Yeah, I was just curious on what the fee was being raised from and to what to, and if it does cover the cost of running the program.
Okay. Is anyone from Behavioral Health could be here to answer those questions?
Good morning. I'm David Sackman, Deputy Director of Behavioral Health. You were asking a question about the fees that are being raised from and to? Okay. The fees for the Wet and Reckless program.
Could you speak up, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Sorry. The fee for the Wet and Reckless program will not be increased because none of the components that we are increasing are part of that program. The first offender level 1 program will be increased from $637 to $742. The first offender level 2 program, the 6-month program, will be raised from $897 to $1,077. The 9-month program will be raised from $1,222 to $1,497. And the 18-month multiple offender program will be raised from $1,691 to $2,117. And the reason these are being raised is we are required by the state of California as part of the DUI programs to be self-funded, and we've had increased costs, and we need to maintain our ability to meet those costs because we can't use any of our other treatment dollars to pay for that program.
And the state has approved your fee increase?
The state has approved your fee increase, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any questions, any other questions about this item?
I'll move the item.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded for approval. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and opposed, hearing none, the motion passes on a 4-0-1 absent. Okay. We are at the point on our agenda this morning. This is public comments. I want to remind anyone that it's limited to 5 minutes per person, 15 minutes per topic, and the mic is open. Good morning, Bonnie.
Good morning. My name's Bonnie Newman. I'm from Double Springs. And I know y'all have heard that a federal judge has blocked the pay cut for in-home health care givers. That was made public in June 26th. But I noticed that our last timesheet says that our wages are still planning to be cut. And I don't know if this came from the state or the county. But we know they can't be cut at this time, and I'm also probably a messenger that you might want to hear from or you might not want to hear from. But this is the same packet of information that I provided you before, and I'd like to remind you, because I haven't heard in any of the newspaper articles that anyone has remembered that on page 13 of this little packet, gosh darn it, healthcare workers are supposed to get a 25% pay raise on July 1st. So I'm expecting my timesheet will not only not have a pay cut, but it'll also have my pay raise. So if that's not in the works, I just want to remind you that that's still part of our contract, and that's still what we're expecting. So, any comment? Have you heard anything anywhere? Because in the newspaper, the only article I read said that, well, we understand we can't do pay cuts, but...
Isn't it true, Mr. Jones, that ruling was immediately challenged by the state?
I don't know. David Sirius has been in communication with the agency, as to the effect of that ruling on the county's obligation to make these payments. I don't exactly know where it stands, but I can find out before the day's out and get back to you on that.
Okay.
Isn't part of the question the effect on the state's obligation to pay its share of this to the counties?
Yes.
And so we're asking not only what our obligation is, but when will the state be delivering, as a result of this litigation, the monies that we can pass through to
That's my
this?
understanding.
And maybe that FMAP money that might be somewhere out there, that's something we'd like to know about too. And I'm still reading newspapers, so that's where my information. So I'd appreciate if you guys find anything out, let me know so I can pass the word. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Anyone else wishing to address the board this morning under public comments? Good morning, Tim.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board, staff, and public. Hopefully you've all received your invitation, so I want to just remind you that next week we have two events for the opening of the Angels Camp Bypass. On Tuesday afternoon from 4 to 7, there will be a series of celebrations with vendors and various activities, and we will spell out in human form for an aerial photograph Mountain Fun with T-shirts provided by sponsors. There will be a fun run and various activities. And then on Wednesday at 10 o'clock will be the official ribbon cutting for the Angels Camp Bypass. Again, just real briefly, that project has been in the planning stages for over 50 years. Funded finally through the Prop 1B, what's called CMIA, or Corridor Mobility Improvement Account Funds. Project is a year and a half ahead of schedule, and construction bid was fully $6 million under allocation. So it's a success story in many ways, and we hope to see you out there.
Does the $6 million go to the contractor as a bonus, or what?
No, it actually goes back to the state highway account, and so we can't use that for any other purposes, although there are some other issues that we still need to resolve. There was a Native American site that was discovered. There were a few other claims. We hit a mine shaft, and so we're still sorting out all those final costs. It goes back to state highway account.
Okay. I've heard speculation that Governor Schwarzenegger might make an appearance.
There is speculation to that effect, although that has not been confirmed.
Okay. I'm very sorry, Tim, but I'm going to be on vacation. I won't be able to make that, so I'll give my apologies to the governor, and I'm sure Supervisor Callaway, will you be there to represent the board?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes? Okay.
Since we gave cookies to bribe the California Transportation Commission, you bet.
Yeah, it'll take a big cookie, perhaps, just to think about.
And I'll be looking forward to driving the bypass when I get back.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other things to report?
Well, that's the big one. I just got back from vacation, so I'm still kind of sorting things out.
Okay. The Valley Springs community plan or circulation plan still moving forward?
Moving forward splendidly.
All right.
So,
We have a meeting on July 30th with State Board.
yes.
All right. Anybody else have any questions of Mr. McSorley?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have another subject. I know how you feel about listening to people, because sometimes I can't even stand to hear myself talk. So I think sometimes a demonstration might be a little more effective. So today, I'm going to revisit the subject of my trees on Double Springs Road. The way most people are aware of cutting trees, and this is a piece of firewood that had something that I could show you all. is if you have a tree, you've got branches sticking out on it. If you cut the branch off about this far, you can get a couple of little shoots that come out, and sometimes the branch will grow back. If you cut a branch off like this, or like this, you might get a little, I call them poop decks, that come out and try to grow, but it'll never be the same. What you notice on a tree is there's something called a collar. This is it's almost like a scab that will grow back and cover an injury. But if you harm the collar, or if you take a chainsaw and you cut the whole collar off, then you're damaging the tree. Disease can get in, insects can get in, it can kill the tree. To prune a tree, you use something like a lopper, and this can get a branch about this big. If you've got a bigger branch, you might use a prune saw, and then you cut underneath, and then you cut on the top, so you don't rip the branch up. And then if you've got little tiny branches that certainly can't hurt anyone, use a little tiny tool like this. And let me show you something. This is my poor lilac tree, lilac bush. What ended up is they used a chainsaw. Almost every branch left is shredded like this. Just shredded, waiting for something to kill it. The ones that are left, they took the chainsaw, they went up and down the branches. I don't know what they were trying to do. I think they were really trying to kill all the trees. I suggest we get somebody from the Ag Department or somebody down in the Master Gardeners to go over and show these people how to prune trees. This is my personal property, my 35-year-old lilac bush. These guys have equipment, they're out there, they're destroying trees up and down, double springs. I watched, I looked a few places. When they cut a branch with a chainsaw, oops, oh, it went into the trunk 2 inches. Oh, well, over and over and over. I'm just sick about it. Yeah. I'm hoping somebody will, on the road department, will hear that wacko in Double Springs is calling us all a bunch of idiots because we don't know how to prune trees. Maybe they'll tune in, they'll watch this, and they'll learn how to prune a tree. Otherwise, these guys need training. They need supervision. The trees will never be the same. Thank you.
Bonnie, when you were here before showing those pictures, it really wasn't clear to me whether those trees were inside the county right-of-way or outside the county right-of-way.
Well, I don't know if they are or if they aren't, but they're 18 feet off the road. Now they've left double poison oak bushes 2 feet off the road. They left Carol's trees untouched, and hers come out towards the road, like mine did. Up at the ranch, it's only clear a foot away, and then we've got trees and bushes and brush right next to the road. So I don't know why they chose mine. Well, they do. Because I had a row of 18 trees, nice shady area. They wanted to park their equipment there, but the low branches were in their way. So they shaved them off so they could put their equipment there. And I don't know what the right-of-way is, but one other thing, nobody on Double Springs knew they were coming down the road. I didn't. But all of a sudden they were there. You know, there's only 9 houses on Double Springs. We could have been notified or something. I didn't see it in the paper anywhere either. I'm still trying to find out where the money's coming from. I hope it's not stimulus money. And they shouldn't be cutting trees in June. If they knew they had to do the road, they should have done it last minute when you cut trees. So, anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bonnie. Is there anyone else wishing to address the board this morning? Good morning, Jim.
Good morning. Jim Turley representing SEIU. I know that the board has spent a lot of time reviewing the situation with the budget. I'm not here to question that. I'm basically here to read a press release that we're going to give out and wanted to let you know about it beforehand. So I will proceed. Our chapter membership, 240 strong, authorized our representatives to sign a binding contract with the County of Calaveras. This memorandum of understanding is effective January 1st, 2009 through June 30th, 2010, duration of 18 months. Membership of our chapter in a realistic and responsible and understanding of the current economic conditions did not ask for or receive any financial increases in this contract. This gesture results in a pay increase, no pay increase from March 1st of 2008 through June 30th, 2010, period of 28 months. This is an estimated savings to the county of $2.8 million. The employees also accepted the full burden of the health insurance premium increase of 3.8% in 2008, an estimated savings to the county of $380,000. As a result of our membership, generally the lowest paid county employees has assisted our elected and appointed directors in excess of $3.1 million. In early April, SEIU 1021 Calaveras County Chapter officers were requested by Mr. Robert Lawton, Chief Administrative Officer, to make suggestions, and I want to stress the word suggestions, that would assist in balancing the proposed budget shortfall. In late April, a list of our suggestions were submitted to the administration. These suggestions were a compilation of ideas from our bargaining unit. The suggestions included, but are not limited to, pay reductions on a sliding scale from the top down on the frontline workers. Number one, a 15% pay reduction for the Board of Supervisors and elected officials and appropriate and appointed directors and officials. 12.5 pay reduction for mid-management individuals, a 10% pay reduction for those in the supervisory position, and a 5% pay reduction for the frontline workers. The mid-management position and supervisor positions and frontline workers would be adjusted at an entry-level pay for their position. An election to pay a smaller portion of the PERS employees' cost at 2%. Number two, elected and appointed officials would contribute to their PERS retirement at a rate of 2%, and the mid-management, supervisory, and line workers would contribute at a rate of 1%. An expanded use of voluntary time off program would stay in place. Number three, a 4 9-hour work schedule in government center closing 1 day per week. These and other suggestions were either thought of as unrealistic, not important, or frivolous, since the response was not forthcoming. As a result, none of the aforementioned suggestions were presented to our membership for ratification as a valid alternative to assist during the budget crisis and to save positions within the county. Bargaining resulted in the following proposals. And I would add that this hasn't changed since April when it was presented originally. Employees pay 7% of their PERS retirement cost plus 2% in furloughs. The county proposed to renegotiate the amount of retirement contribution that was accepted in lieu of cost of living adjustments on a COLA. The 7% PERS retirement contribution was an item negotiated in a previous contract several years past. It's not up for negotiation. We gave up a pay raise in order for you to pay our PERS. So if you want us to pay our PERS, we want the pay raise back. Number 2 on this one is 24 furlough days, 13 of which were holidays that we would be unpaid. Not acceptable. Each of these alternatives capped at an overall 9% decrease to our employees' earnings. Again, I remind you that you are the lowest paid employees you have in the county. The target amount of 9% is the total concession requested by administration of the SEIU members. On July 7th and July 8th, our members of SEIU voted on the proposal. 87.5% of the members gave a resounding no vote, not to accept either of the options presented for ratification. Separately, the state of California, unable to fund certain services within the county budget, has already had an effect of 8 of our citizens losing their income, their health benefits, their retirement dreams, and most importantly, the ability to support themselves and their dependents. It is also a realization that the diversion of funds from departments by both the state and county will result in further layoffs. The objective of my presence today is to present the members of SEIU and present the County Board of Supervisors and the public that you represent a deeper understanding of why our members voted no to the proposals. Our hope is that the board and public realize we are good, caring, hardworking individuals that take pride in the level of our workmanship and public service we provide. We ask that the elected officials and appointed directors to take a close look at the contributions and sacrifices of our 240-plus members and recognize that our ability to sacrifice does have a limit. I would like to thank you for allowing me to read that. Now, I woke up this morning and I had a thought and I realized I'm on the clock. I think you need to know who the SEIU is in the local county. We're the people, and I work in the road department, so I can relate mostly to them. Fortunately, I work in an office, so I'm comfortable most of the day. I have a window that has the sun beating down on me, but it's not 110 degrees outside or 102 degrees, and I'm not pouring asphalt that is at a higher temperature, and I'm not holding the shovel directing traffic. And you have that group that stands out in the middle of the road directing traffic during the time of rain and storms. You have snowplow drivers. You have the people that answer your phones and answer the questions for you. You have the people that are making $13.39 an hour on the low end of a pay scale, and you're asking them to take more cuts. You're asking them to give up their ability to feed their families while we sit and we do not do a thing. Now, some of you have volunteered for pay cuts. That's admirable. But let's face it, 10% isn't going to make it at the top. If you expect us to take 10%, I would suggest that you take 20%. We cannot survive in this county on what you pay us now, much less what you're proposing to do to our paychecks. The 7% that you're asking us to pay into PERS comes off the top of our paycheck. And they used, administration uses the pretense that it's pre-tax. It still amounts to 6+%. That's $6 out of every 100 you pay us. We can't afford it. The directors who make more than $100,000 in this county can afford a lot more than we can. I ask you to take into consideration the fact that the SEIU group, the 240 plus, are a majority of the county employees. We have gotten 29% pay increases in the last 10 years. You have a group of individuals, and it's public record, you have a group of individuals that have received in excess of 59.5% increases in the same period of time. We do not ask for new vehicles every year for our workers to drive around in. We do not ask for your support in any way except to back us up. In April of 2006, our public works worked 24 hours a day on flood control, trying to prevent more damage to public property. You had another person that waited by the phones for 24 hours straight, waiting for phone calls. You don't get this kind of dedication and loyalty and workmanship from people that don't care. You talk about people being on the front lines and the first responders. Our road workers and other employees within the county are your first responders. We're the ones that find where the fires are and report them. And we've had people go into homes before the first responders could get there to save lives. We're the ones that stand in the middle of the road with the sign directing traffic to keep the first responders safe. Yet we give them 3% at 50 years, and we get 2% at 55 on retirement. As I said at the beginning, I represent 240 people, more than 240 people, with the SEIU in Calaveras County. These are your constituents. They're the ones that maintain this county. Your directors and your higher paid employees allow us with their directions to do the work that you want done. And I know I'm rambling a little bit and I apologize, but there's one other thought that I do have. We as a unit have often criticized the bargaining team that the County of Calaveras has put together to work with us in bargaining the contracts. I think that's our criticism of them is misplaced. It has become obvious to me that their direction is directly in response to what you as a board want. You as a board, and you, Mr. Lawton, have shown a total lack of respect for our knowledge, our abilities, and willingness to do the job. I've been accused of being hard-nosed at the bargaining table without being told that to my face. So I will tell you right now, in upcoming bargaining, I will make the assumption that anything that Ms. Osborne says to me or to a bargaining unit comes directly from you. And it will be hard-nosed. I refuse to accept the fact that a group can give 59% pay increases while we accept 29%. And then we are asked to take more pay cuts with no consideration to pay cuts to that unit. Now, I would ask that the directors and the board stand up and lead this county the way they were elected to do. We said no to your alternatives. We were asked for suggestions. We were given none, and our suggestions were ignored. Now, I would ask Mr. Lawton, give us realistic suggestions. At the direction of the board, we will consider them. We will not consider anything until you suggest at this point. I don't know what part of 182 votes saying no you don't understand. They understood exactly what they were getting into. I was very clear that a no vote would result in layoffs. If that is what needs to be done to get your attention and for you to lead this county, then do it. But don't sit back and blame us for your lack of ability to lead. Thank you.
Mr. Turley took 15 minutes, and I was more than willing to allow that to happen. It's a very, very important discussion. Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
I don't agree with all of it, but thank you for your report. So. Bonnie, are you going to take one more bite at the apple this morning?
It's okay.
Are you going to give us another tutorial on trimming trees, or?
No, I'm going to do something that I don't usually do. I don't usually read anything. I usually feel more comfortable talking, but you watch me, I get off on a tangent, and then my time is gone. So, this is a letter to the editor that has not been published, but it's my idea of how to save money. It's called the $2 million boondoggle. You know what a boondoggle is? It's a wonderful word. It means trivial work. Since 2003, Calaveras County has collected about $400,000 a year to fund an agency called the Public Authority. It's sort of a sub-agency over at the Well Fraud Department that is just another cancerous growth of administration and bureaucracy that sucks up money and produces very little. This agency is entrusted with over $2 million hard-earned tax dollars and also an incredible amount of possibility and potential to do a lot of really positive things for our disabled and senior citizens. But they've squandered it. The Public Authority is responsible for a registry of home care providers and training, and that's about it. Is this agency really worth further funding? Oh, sure, we've kept 3 people employed full-time to the tune of $140,000 a year, and yet 282 home health workers make less than $10 an hour. The Public Authority enjoys full benefits. Only 64 health care workers have the most minimum health care benefits. The Public Authority enjoys sick leave and vacation time, not available to health care workers. The Public Authority probably has use of a county vehicle or gets reimbursed for using their own car. Health care workers transport clients in their personal vehicle and has to ask the client for gas money. How can we continue to justify such an extravagant expenditure as the Public Authority with such meager results, while the labor of the hardest working, most self-sacrificing group of employees in the county is discounted? I'm hoping to convince the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors to reconsider their position in regards to the Public Authority. Send the funding back to the state. Tell them the public authority in Calaveras County has not worked effectively enough to continue funding. The money might be better used elsewhere, like some decent health care benefits for our health care workers. And if that's not possible, let the state keep the money. California's in an economic meltdown. What a proactive gesture that would be, and probably unprecedented. Can you imagine a little cash-strapped county like Calaveras sending money back to the state to help out? It might make the news. If others follow with the same spirit, we could get out of this mess sooner. The last gentleman talked about 240 Calaveras County employees being represented by a union. I think I represent 282. I can't call them county employees, but they work for the county. There's 282 of us that don't enjoy the benefits the county employees enjoy. And we're not even making $10 an hour, and we're being asked to take a 17% cut in our pay cut. So I say I'm not a hard-nosed negotiator. I'm a whiner, and that's the way I conduct my business. I just can't imagine. I've heard people saying we can't take a 7% pay cut. We can't. The road department's up in arms, the sheriff's department, and yet we're being asked to take a 17% pay cut, and it's just beyond me. We're the low people in the totem pole in this county. We're not really county employees, but we sort of are. And the public authority came and asked you to take an action, and I went for 2 months doing all this paperwork and research. And I don't get paid for it. I think they get paid plenty. They should have presented you with the right information from the get-go. I'm done. Any comment?
Supervisor Walensky.
Having been involved in the organizing of the state home care workers, I think it's important to note one important feature that you may have left out and may not, because you Calaveras came late into the picture. But home care workers in the state of California, by law, were I believe, the only large sector of the workforce that had no right to collective bargaining, were by law required to receive minimum wage. The state of California had an IP system, independent provider system. Everybody was self-employed. There was no employer of record. It was the fact of having no employer of record that allowed the triple funding, state, federal, and local governments, to all point to each other and say that's the employer. And ultimately courts ruled that there was no employer. The creation of the public authority system was what allowed home care providers to engage in collective bargaining, which raised the wages from, at the time, $5.25 an hour to the current arrangements, which have varied county to county, but go anywhere from about $8.25 to about $12.80, I think, at this point. I would hope that your suggestion of criticism of the local public authority and its allocations is not a suggestion, or that giving back the money to the state is not a suggestion to abolish the only employer of record, which would then set us back to the original condition. Rather, I think some level of attention to the original effort of public authorities to be one of the only public service agencies that has a requirement that consumers and providers of the service serve as a majority of the board. That the whole intent of that arrangement was to allow for both the people who receive services and provide them to direct policy. So if that policy, or if those policies are not consistent with the goals of those two important constituencies, that has some reflection on the appointment process, the level of involvement of the different participants in that process. So my hope is we're talking about reform of this rather than abolition, which would set us back into the previous Stone Age that we just recently emerged from.
Well, I understand there's different models for the public authority, and I just think this one has transformed itself into something that is not very effective. It's more, I call it fluff and circumstance, where we're not dealing with the nitty-gritty issues, and there's such disparity between the healthcare workers and the public authority at this time. I just think, the hell with it. You know, that's where I'm coming from. So, and there are different models, you're right, and we could re-examine that, and I'm sure that would be up to you all. And I'm not sure if the welfare department looks in on that too, but I'd sure like to be participating in any discussion of that, because I sure got my big mouth open about it. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bonnie. Anyone else wishing to address the board this morning? All right, let's move on then. We're moving on to, this is item number 8. This is a public hearing and possible board action to consider an application for funding from the general allocation of the State Community Development Block Grant, CDBGF program for 2009-2010. This is brought to us by CalWorks. And good morning, Larry Busby.
Good morning, Larry Busby, Central Sierra Planning Council. This is a time for the public hearing on the county's proposed application for funding through the Community Development Block Grant Program for the 2009-2010 fiscal year. Each year, the state of California comes out with a notice of funding availability in which all rural counties may apply for funding under that year's program. This year, the state of California has $15 million available under the program, which is about half the amount they had last year, and probably about a third of the amount they had in the years prior to that in terms of money that's available. The funds come from the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development. They are passed through to the state of California. The state of California sets up a program for rural areas to apply for the funding. Only counties and incorporated cities are eligible to apply. Any application that is approved then becomes the responsibility of the county or the incorporated city to implement the program as proposed. This year, the county is proposed to apply for $370,000 for an employment training program for lower-income households throughout the county, and also to provide $182,500 in funding for the partial operation of the new food bank. The food bank activity is actually the purchase of equipment that will allow the food bank to expand their operation into areas not previously addressed. They were going to be able to now purchase refrigerated trucks to expand their available food service to the community. And there are two representatives here, one from the food bank and one from the Mother Lode Job Training who will operate the program. And I'll ask Jeannie, do you want to say something about your application?
Hi, Jeannie Hayward from the Resource Connection Food Bank, and I'm here representing the Resource Connection with a request for a refrigerated box truck, a cargo van, and a backup generator. The backup generator is so that we can ensure that the food we have in the warehouse stays cold. If we lose refrigeration, we lose electricity to our refrigeration units. The cargo van will allow us to operate at more mobile pantry sites. We currently have mobile pantry sites, 4 of them, throughout the county that we visit about once a month, some twice, but it will allow us to expand that. And the refrigerated box truck will allow us, as we are in the process of applying with Feeding America, will allow us to get food down in the valley, keep the food safe. We have issues with the truck we have now as far as the size of it, the lift gate. We're having to unpack and pack food on pallets currently because the lift gate isn't strong enough to get the food into the truck. So we have some issues with that. So that is our request. Thank you.
Any questions, Jeannie? Ginny, I just have one.
Sure.
My interest was piqued here with the standby generator. Have you researched the purchase of a standby generator?
I have researched and looked at estimated costs. I don't have an exact cost on that.
Okay. Well, I would like to suggest to you that I think that you have unique in this foothill region that you have natural gas, compressed natural gas on your property. Standby generators have a funny way of the fuel gets contaminated. You know, they run so infrequently that if you're powering the generator with either gasoline or diesel, you have to change it out all the time because it gets loses its volatility. However, you can get generators that run on natural gas, and that would be I would strongly suggest that you take a look at that.
I will, thank you.
They may be marginally more expensive, but in the long run, they'd be a far better choice for you.
Great, thank you very much. Great.
Anyone else have any questions?
Thank you.
Mr. Clapp?
Shauna Monaco is the new rep.
Mr. Clapp, did you have a comment?
I was just noticing on the old block funds and stuff, they used to come in and they were regenerated. People would apply for them, they'd get them, and as those funds were paid back with low interest, it went back into the fund to be loaned out again. And the last couple of times I've seen stuff coming through here, it's like it's just used up. And I was wondering if those funds are gone, or they ever use them that way again?
It's different. Those are different funding streams and different rules governing them.
Different application.
Did the board want me to expand on that, or?
Sure.
The program you're talking about is still in existence. And the program basically is a housing rehabilitation program where funds were put out on the block grant program over many years. And now the county is recovering those funds because they were loan funds. The other program is called the Home Investment Partnership Act, which is not a grant program but has to be put out in the form of loans. Those loans then come back to the county. The county is recovering those funds now and then putting them back out again to eligible households for similar activities. In other words, because that money comes back, that allows the county to recycle that money for additional housing rehabilitation programs or first-time homebuyer programs as the county sees fit. And all those are governed by the county's program income reuse plan. And if you would like a copy, I can give it to you when we get back to the office, and you can take a look at it and see where that money goes. This program is one shot, one time this year, and you either get funded or you don't get funded. In this case, what's being requested is a follow-up to programs that the county has utilized in the past for the block grant program. Is it?
Okay, any other questions on this item?
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I'd like to introduce Shana Monaco, who's also the job trade agency person here in county, and ask her to present her program.
Absolutely. Good morning.
Good morning. Shauna Monaco, Mother Load Job Training. As Larry said, I'm the new manager, so I'll be very quick. I'm still trying to learn everything myself, but what I have learned is we do have a waiting list of over 30 people who do not qualify under the WIA and the ERA restrictions that we have to serve people in our community. So at least those 30 people are waiting to be served and have been waiting for quite some time. So if we're granted the funds, we'll be able to help those that don't otherwise qualify for our programs. And we'll be putting them through work experience, vocational training, internships. So we have a variety of opportunities for people in the county. Any questions?
Okay, you said that you're new in this position?
Very new. Yes.
How long?
Almost a month. And I was over in the Tuolumne office for the first couple of weeks training. So I'm still trying to learn the county and figure out what great things we've been doing.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to working with you. Anybody have any questions of Shauna? Your last name is Monaco?
Monaco. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name's Terry Baker, and I would just like to, on the food program, I have a vehicle I'd be more than happy to donate. It's an all-wheel drive van, and it runs real well. and I also have a small generator. I'd be more than happy to donate to these people if it will help. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anyone else wishing to make a comment on this item? If not, the chair entertains a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded for this resolution. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes on a 4-0-1. And because of the timeliness of getting this resolution filed with Sacramento today, I'm going to take about a 5-minute break to give me a chance to sign the resolution and send Mr. Busby on his way. So can we reconvene here in about 5 minutes? To talk to Mr. Marconi about that. Okay, we have just finished item number 8, so we're going to item number 9, a public hearing, possible board action on the zoning amendment for El Dorado Ranch LLC. This is brought to us by the Planning Department.
Good morning, Gina Cathan, County Planning. The applicant is requesting a rezoning to the subject property from rural residential 5-acre density to a general forest zone. The general forest zone is a resource zone. The general plan allows resource zones in any land use designation, and staff finds the zoning consistent with the surrounding area. The zoning will allow the potential for valuable industry into an area that currently has none. The Planning Commission and staff both recommend approval on the zoning amendment.
Okay. Any members of the staff or the Board of Supervisors wish to ask a question of staff?
I just wanted to reiterate part of the message of this packet, which is that this has been thoroughly vetted within the community for the last 2 years. The applicant actually came before a number of community meetings. There was one that spent a considerable time devoted to this subject, and that the Mount Ranch Community Plan has included this use and this rezoning within the proposal that is now before the county, so that it has been, I think, more vetted than probably any small project in the history of Mountain Ranch.
Okay. How soon would I be able to order some trusses?
You'll have to ask Alan.
So,
On the other, I forgot. I also wanted to mention that that people have talked, and one of the issues that came up before the community was the question of trucks and the loads going back and forth. And what I would say at this point is it's clear that right now we're an importer of trusses. There's no truss building going on in this section of the county, and I'm not sure actually that we have anything going on in a good part of the county. So the trucks that involve trusses are now coming from out of county into this area. The same number of trucks would be likely to now be going from here out, but this was not going to substantially increase any kind of traffic on the roads, and that was one issue that got put to rest early in the process.
any other questions? Any comments from the public on this item? Okay, if not, I'd like to close the public hearing and request a motion on this.
I'd like to make the motion. Gina, do you wish me to read into the record the findings, or can I simply refer the findings in Section 2? All right. Well, I incorporate the findings outlined in the document before us, Project 2009-011, Zoning Amendment for El Dorado Ranch, LLC, and incorporate both Section 1 and Section 2 of the ordinance as we've discussed, Section 3 and Section 4. So I move the entire ordinance and hope for a second.
I'll second that.
All right, moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the item passes on a 4-0-1 absent. Congratulations, and just as soon as you can make a trust, I'd like to talk to you. Thank you very much. This is really a very a momentous occasion here, I think. This is great. Okay, moving on to item number 10. We have a public hearing, possible action regarding county-initiated correction to the ordinance 2905 for the Blue Mountain Residential Center conformance rezone. This is also brought to us by planning.
Gina Catherine, County Planning again. A typographical error was discovered in a previously adopted ordinance number 2905. Staff inadvertently referenced Township 5 North, Range 3 East in place of Township 5 North, Range 13 East. The record clearly shows the intent to include sections 2 and 3 of Township 5 North, Range 13 East in the zoning, in the rezoning. The maps associated with the ordinance that was adopted clearly indicated that these parcels or these sections in this township and range were to be included in the adoption of the ordinance. The ordinance you have for you today will simply correct the error, creating an accurate record of the rezoning that took place in December of 2006 for the Blue Mountain Residential Center.
Any questions?
Yes, I would like to move the item and note that while there has been some controversy about this, that the record clearly shows that the original maps, the subject of threatened law litigation on this, all involved the same 24 to 25 square mile area.
Correct.
That was established long before current controversies developed on other matters, and that the particular typo, which printed a 0 instead of a 1, actually led to this section, to a reference to a non-existent section.
Correct.
And so, therefore, this simply is a ministerial act, not a policy one, and that we are correcting the typo.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion to approve the correction, yes.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Before I ask for the question, I'm just curious, Gina, on this, the ordinance here has a section 4 that says that this shall take effect and be enforced at the expiration of 30 days after its passage. Surely this must be some error again. I mean, if it was a typographical error only, why, to correct this typographical error, one digit, do we have to advertise this or keep this from being enforced for 30 days? Mr. Jones might answer this more adequately, but
I don't think it's necessary.
I would certainly hope that.
Isn't that a repeat of the original?
Well, I don't know. It talks about the 14th day of August. It won't become effective until the 14th day of August of 2009. So would the maker of the motion consider striking that section and making
it immediately effective? Yes. That I would consider that a friendly addition to it.
Okay, and the second still applies?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor of the modified motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries on a 4-0-1.
Thank you.
Thank you. I read that originally as being part of the original action, but then it just doesn't make any sense.
Good eye.
All right, moving on to this county council. Let's see.
Item 12.
Item number, oh yeah, we have 11 that was dispensed with earlier, so item number 12. This is a discussion and possible action regarding, this is to receive the draft agriculture and forestry element and include it as a separate element in the general plan update. And 2, direct staff to use the draft as a base document in preparing the agriculture and forestry element for the general plan update. And this is brought to us by the Ag Commissioner and the Environmental Management Agency. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, Mary Mutz, Agricultural Commissioner. Good morning, Mr. Thomas, members of the board. This morning, on behalf of the Agricultural Coalition, I'm seeking board action on the following. that you agree to include a separate agriculture and forestry element in the general plan update, and that you direct staff to continue working with the Agricultural Coalition on further revisions of the attached draft and agriculture forestry element. The details included in this draft element are not written in stone, and as it now stands are subject to further revisions. We do not intend to discuss and go over every detail of this draft element this morning. Today, we are seeking board agreement to include a separate agriculture and forestry element in the general plan update, and to have this draft accepted as a working document with a full understanding that revisions will be forthcoming. The Coalition has been working on this document consistently for over 2 years. In April of 2008, Scott Clan of the Calaveras Wine Alliance presented you with a letter indicating the need for an agriculture and forestry element. Since that date, the Coalition has met numerous times to work on the document and reviewed the content with various planning directors and staff. The Coalition has met with George White, our current planning director, and provided him a copy as well. Today, the Coalition feels it's time to move forward with this document. The Coalition would like to discuss with you the necessity for a separate ag and forestry element and the necessity to use the attached draft as the baseline document. So with that being said, there are certain Coalition members that would like to address the board this morning and speak with you and answer any questions. So with the chair's permission, I'd like to turn this item over to Scott Clan of the Calaveras Wine Alliance.
Any questions of Mary first? Okay, thank you, Mary.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Clan.
Paperwork. Hi, members of the board. Over the past 2 years, members of the Calaveras County Agriculture Coalition have regularly and quite effectively worked with county staff on development of the draft base ag and forestry element that is before you today. It is our opinion that the draft presented today represents a significant set of compromises based on input we've received over the past several months from supervisors. We recognize that the draft presented herein might still contain issues that need further attention, such as minimal parcel sizes, but we are also respectful of the fact that this is not the forum to discuss these individual issues today. We also recognize the need to ensure internal consistency between the general plan update and its elements. These issues will be vetted through further development of the document by and between county staff and Ag Coalition if the board so directs. Furthermore, it has been stated by former interim CDA Director Brent Harrington, as well as the General Plan Update consultants, that there would be no additional costs associated with this ag forestry element. So at this time, we ask the Board of Supervisors to approve the inclusion of a standalone ag and forestry element in the General Plan Update, and to direct staff to continue working with us, the Ag Coalition, utilizing the submitted draft ag and forestry element as the base document for preparing a final standalone ag and forestry element. Many members of the Ag Coalition are here today to speak with you and answer any questions. We just want to thank you for your time.
Any questions of Mr. Clan? Anybody else want to? Oh. Good morning, Mr. Segala.
Al Segala, Taxpayer Association. My question is real simple. Could somebody elaborate on the need for this?
I think that's on you. Thank you, Al.
Haven't seen you in a while, Mr. Impacino.
Yeah, I have a serious back injury. It's been sidelining me. So.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
You did manage to leap from your
seat
rather sprightly.
in a single bound.
Divine intervention.
Very smooth moves.
Okay. Anyway. I apologize. I may go over my 3 minutes because I was prepared because last time we were here in February, there was a talk about having a workshop, and I was kind of prepared to do a workshop. But it looks like we're going to be in this tighter 3-minute category, so give me a little leeway on this.
I'll give you a little latitude since you're injured.
Okay. we all know why we're here, I think. Ag production value is still over $20 million a year in Calaveras County, and that production goes to help our nation provide food, shelter, and clothing. That's an important thing to work to preserve. But those aren't the only values associated with ag land. Other values include the net fiscal benefits to local governments. Numerous studies show ag is a net fiscal benefit relative to developed uses that tend to consume more government revenues than they produce. Another important value for preserving ag land is the stewardship of natural resources. Our ag lands provide groundwater recharge, stormwater filtration and retention, fish and game habitat, endangered species habitat, oak woodlands, carbon sequestration, soil conservation, air pollution reductions, fire breaks, and scenic beauty. Those are all important values that we want to see preserved in Calaveras County. Another value that's important that ag land represents is respect for our history and our tradition. Many families want to carry on the agricultural traditions of their ancestors. Finally, I want to note that there's also an important value provided by ag land associated with character development. Ag land not only produces good food and fiber, but the families that work it produce good people. I have worked in the Sierra Nevada foothills for 20 years, from as far north as Grass Valley to as far south as Mariposa. It's been my observation that farming families and their offspring are represented in boards of supervisors, planning commissions, and other areas of local service, providing leadership far beyond their proportion in the general population. We owe it to our future to ensure that those kind of leaders are still nurtured on our ag lands. So those are some of the other values we're trying to preserve. Okay, now, there's another reason we're here, because we're in a general plan process. And we all know that, guess what, the general plan will convert ag lands to developed uses. When the map comes out, there will be ag lands converted to developed uses. When the staff's map comes out, then the rest of the public's going to look at it, and you will be besieged with requests from people who want to convert additional ag lands to development. To give you an example, I've seen it in Mariposa, I've seen it in El Dorado. The most recent time I've seen it is Amador. Amador came out with a draft land use map. The least impacting alternative was going to convert 9,000 acres of ag land to develop uses in the next 20 years. It was circulated for public review. Landowners came in and asked for another 21,000 acres of land to be converted from agricultural to developed uses. So there will be some conversion of ag land to developed uses. We know that. And because we know that, we also know that there's going to be a requirement to mitigate those impacts of ag land conversion. And I know last time we were here, there was some discussion, well, if that CEQA law requires us to mitigate the impacts, why don't we just do it on a project-specific basis and not worry about having these policies in the general plan? Well, there are two good reasons to have it in the general plan. First of all, it puts the development community on notice that, yes, there will be mitigation requirements, and you won't have to have those debates with those pesky development lawyers saying, well, we don't need to mitigate our ag land impacts. The second reason is it provides boilerplate ways to mitigate those impacts, thereby facilitating mitigated negative declarations and the processing of projects in a quicker fashion. I think this is an important concept I want you to appreciate, because this is a really important strategy to follow as you're developing a general plan. We know there are certain resource constraints that we're currently facing because we don't have programmatic mitigation, whether it's ag land mitigation or endangered species mitigation or road impact mitigation. You can use the general plan as an opportunity to solve those problems at a programmatic level. So when a developer comes in, he says, okay, these are your requirements. You can fill these requirements easily. It won't be an issue of massive amounts of negotiation or community strife, and you can process your project much more quickly.
Mr. Infacino, you've been going for 4 minutes and 30 seconds. I'm going to give you about another minute. So.
Okay, thanks. And that's why in both conservative and liberal jurisdictions throughout the state, they've adopted programmatic level ag land preservation and protection rules. So in conclusion, I just want to say that I'm here on behalf of the Calaveras Planning Coalition. We support the inclusion of an ag element in the general plan. We support using the Ag Coalition's draft, recognizing that it will be changed, by input from consultants, staff, public agencies, and of course the supervisor's input. And we look forward to that workshop that we thought was going to happen after the February board action. We encourage you to embrace this open public effort that's represented in the ag element, and so that nobody will doubt your continued commitment to the protection of ag land and ag values in this county. Thank you, and God bless.
Any questions of Mr. Infacino? Thank you, Tom. Did that answer your question, Al? You have 5 minutes, Al.
These are really good people, the ag people. I know a lot of them, and they're just wonderful. And this comment he made about character is so true. If you want to deal with an honest person, you want to deal with somebody in agriculture most of the time. It seems like the reason for creating another element for the general plan, in this case, is for preservation of ag land. There's also mentioned a mitigation criteria, which I think is a streamlining process where if ag land were to go some other use, it'd be under some known process rather than a more litigious type process. And so that seems to be good. And there's also some reference to endangered species. That endangered species thing has hurt our county pretty bad. We've had, well, at least hundreds of acres, maybe thousands of acres that people can't use and they can't develop because of a rumor that an endangered species was on there. And I think a reasonable mind might question whether this law itself is rational and reasonable. It would seem like enforcement of the endangered species law would wipe out the endangered species. The reason for that is that, say that there's a bug that's endangered and the owner knows about it. What do you think the lifespan of that bug is going to be? That's going to be a dead bug. The reason for the bug dying is because if it were found out by the environmentalists that he existed there, the person has the right to use their property. It's almost a taking without compensation. And so just the process of the endangered species, there must be a better way to provide for endangered species rather than using the federal regulatory approach. Okay, so we don't need in my opinion, we don't need another element to the general plan for endangered species under the agricultural element. That leaves us back to the preservation of ag land. There's a book written named Animal Farm. Animal Farm was written by George Orwell. He also wrote 1984. In the book Animal Farm, the farm animals took over the farm, and they set up a new rule. It's a revolution. And one thing that developed was the pigs were in charge, and they declared that they were more equal than the others. Because they were more equal, they get to sleep in the bed and eat the table and everything, where the other farm animals, well, they were back being slaves again. And so sometimes special interest groups, very powerful ones, want to protect their constituents, which is natural. Where we ought to draw the line is using government force to do that. Promoting ag is great, and it's a good thing, and I really favor that. But when we use governmental force for that purpose, we end up sometimes with unintended consequences. And when we embalm the process in a general plan, being able to correct it would be almost impossible. So I encourage caution in this development of the general plan and making it too constrictive. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else wishing to address the board on this item? Really? Okay, any board members want to make a comment on this item? Supervisor Walensky.
There do seem to be, I guess there's a wide-ranging discussion afoot here, but our task before us is quite simple today. There have been, in terms of caution and careful treading, there's been really 5 years of work, starting with the ag zoning work, the coming together of all parts of the agricultural community in this county, very detailed and sustained work over a long time to get us to this moment. I'm particularly impressed with the fact that the comments of the Board of Supervisors in the previous discussion of this seem to have been carefully listened to. Actually, to this minority point of view, to my chagrin, because there were some things that I was very fond of in this that are no longer with it. But the truth of the matter is that this community has been very sensitive to all criticism, all comment. I have met with a succession of planning directors and CDA directors, and somehow through all of that maze and through the full gauntlet has come up with a very viable, well-thought-through proposal, which they themselves say is only the beginning of a thorough vetting which will take place should we approve this modest suggestion, which is to simply use this as a basis for discussion, to submit it to staff, and to maintain our commitment to a separate ag element, but that ag element is to be integrated and to be consistent with the other elements. To me, it's simple, it's straightforward, it's the product of great work. It has been, again, discussed over and over again in almost every venue that has been provided, and even ones that weren't. I congratulate the ag community. This is a mature, I don't know if you remember 15, 20 years ago when we spent a lot of our time arguing about whether goats were an animal worthy of showing at the county fair or whether wine grape growers were actually involved in agriculture. We've had a lot of more primitive discussions, but this is a very evolved, sophisticated ag community that's come together in the best possible ways, working well with government in a good, close collaboration. With that in mind, and without intending to preempt any discussion, which I'm sure will follow, I would like to move the following, but I'm adding something to the staff recommendation. I would move to include a separate agriculture and forestry element in the general plan update. Secondly, to direct staff to utilize the submitted draft agriculture and forestry element as the base document for preparing the final ag and forestry element. And then I'll add my own sentence to this, number 3, that we would direct staff to continue to update and consult with the Ag Coalition regarding further development of the ag element, just to make sure that the collaboration that has guided this for 5 years continues after this motion. It's not adding any new part of the relationship. It's just asking to continue the very productive one that has set the course to date. So I make that motion in hopes of the second, and then discussion.
I'd rather have had discussion before your motion.
Well, I can hold it for a second if I don't get it, then we can hold discussion first. But I'll make the motion now or later, depending on the chair's preference.
That's kind of a moot, coin toss, whether we talk about it before or after the motion.
That is not.
Supervisor Callaway, do you wish to discuss this item?
Yeah, but I need a second for this.
I'll second. But I have a couple questions to ask George White also before we take a vote.
Okay. Supervisor Callaway, you want to launch into those?
Let him talk to George.
Okay. Okay, just for the record, I heard a motion and a second on this, and this is on discussion.
George, on the funding, you've had conversations with Mintier on this?
Indeed, I have. One of my primary concerns when this proposal was first presented to me shortly after I arrived was that the the general plan budget would be impacted by additional costs in integrating this work into what has already been scoped out. I know my predecessors had already asserted that that was not the case, but to be honest, I was a little skeptical. So I had a meeting and several phone conversations with our general plan consultant just to confirm that fact. But it is confirmed in the minds of our consultant, and now I accept the fact that in their view there will not be any additional cost for either having a separate ag element or having agricultural policies and programs elsewhere in the general plan.
And they're going to work to integrate it?
That is their job.
I just want to make sure.
They have actually given me in writing.
In writing?
In writing, by email, which I think counts, a determination that there would be no additional cost.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, as all of you know, I have been very opposed to additional elements to the general plan. We have 7 of them, and however we want to configure it in the final analysis, so be it economic, water, or ag. I have not supported another element. I have supported the concept. I am going to ask the maker of the motion to do a modification. So, I have spent many hours with my ag mentor tutor. We've had many heated discussions over the years on this ag element. Even yesterday, I was going through the organization of the element and was reminded, as Mary Mutz did, that we are not going to discuss all my red flags and all my concerns about the element. I'm having a hot flash here.
It's that laser thing coming from the ag community.
So,
force field.
I mean, and I'm not going to go over that. I mean, I've gone over it with members of the ag community in detail prior to this revision, and I've gone over it in detail, somewhat heated detail, with my ag mentor trainer.
Is that Supervisor Tryon?
No. Not my heartbeat.
I think he's in the audience but wishes to remain anonymous.
So I will be supporting having an ag element. And but there's components of it for item 2 that Steve mentioned that I cannot support using this as a base document. I'm going to support an ag element because even though I think the ag community and I have had this sort of love-hate relationship over the years, you know, for me, pretty much everything comes from the grocery store wrapped in plastic and, you know, and I can't keep my plants alive. But if we are going to say as a county that we are an ag county, then therefore we need to have an element that makes that statement. And why I haven't supported it is most of the components of this organizational element are going to be in other parts of the general plan and therefore will not be in the element. I mean, its own element. A lot of the issues in here will be under land use. I felt like some of the issues are not appropriate for a general plan. They don't belong there. But for me, over the last few years, the battle has been between growth and what that means, and we're an ag community, and what does that mean? I can't say that I've resolved that issue in my mind. I can't even say that my ag trainers can even give me a definitive answer on how we marry those two components of our county. but I do support the concept that we are an ag community. So from that basis, I will support having an ag element. The reason I'm asking Steve to modify the second part is I had some real issues with the element, with the organization of the elements. I found very exciting Appendix C. I felt like there were very specific changes and directions for this county to grow. Though, as Mr. Segali had said, why do we need this? That had been my question, all along. I can support a lot of the concepts, I think, in Appendix C. I liked Appendix B. I liked the idea of the conversion guidelines. I felt like they were specific. And I liked Appendix A. It was fine. It was okay. But the organization of the element, I had some real problems with. So I don't want it to be used as a base document. I think that sets up the county for a direction that I will have lots of red flags on. I would like it to be that we utilize some of the components of this document, but that we don't use it as the base. So as a courtesy, I would ask the maker of the motion and the second to modify the motion to have a separate ag and forestry element in the general plan update, take that as a sole item, then move to item 2 on how he chooses to direct staff, and then I can say I disagree.
Supervisor Callaway, are you asking for me to divide and separate the motion into 3 elements so that they can be separately voted?
Yeah, well, the third one to me was a given, so that was just a warm and fuzzy, and that's fine. But yes, I'd like you to separate them.
Okay.
It was 2 that she...
I also would be willing to, it seems to me that the concern you have about the second portion of this is more the structure and sequence of it, rather, and possibly the integration of it, as opposed to the content of it. Is that correct?
No.
No. All right. So, all right. Then in that case, while not changing wording, I would ask the chair to vote each of the 3 portions of my motion separately.
Okay. You're objecting to the wording into where it says as the base document.
Correct.
So if we strike as the base document and just says direct staff to utilize the submitted draft agricultural and forestry element for preparing a final agricultural and forestry element.
Yep.
You would
that
be
would be
in favor.
comfortable. Yes.
Well,
I think that's a shorter version of.
The question is whether it actually changes the direction to staff. There's been 4 or 5 years of work that's culminated in this. We have had a couple of moments where we've taken committees that worked in the same way, and they finally got back to something that they couldn't recognize, that their work was jettisoned, and that we wind up almost starting from scratch. I think the goal here is to see the level of work and the quality of it that's been presented to us, and ask that staff use this as essentially the foundation for the discussion. We know that there will be additions, we know that there will be integrations, that there will be different structures and formats maybe that come through all of our elements, and the ag community in all of its communications, including the one today, has indicated a flexibility in how that's handled. I heard when you spoke, Marita, that the concern was less in the content of this, but and I don't want to get into a thorough debate on that, but I'm sure that there will be additional venues in which there will be discussions about this, maybe a workshop that would be called by Mentir or our staff during the course of the deliberations on the general plan, and nobody thinks that we'd be just Xeroxing this and saying, okay, this is the element. But I'm very leery at taking a proposal that says we're using this as a sound basis for the next steps. If if we're really indicating that we might just toss it, I would not feel that that would be a friendly addition to the motion. So I'm trying to figure out how to reference this document. This does it very specifically. If they utilize the thing, what are they utilizing it as?
Just components, not as the base document. When I hear what you say is that we're going to take this document, it's going to be the base and modify the document. I'm saying there's parts in here that are going to be pulled because they belong elsewhere. There are parts in here that I strongly feel do not belong in the general plan. And there's parts in here that I think are redundant. So instead of taking this and micromanaging it, which I'm more than happy to do because I read every word, I would just, there are some good things in here. I don't want it to be the base document and then we modify the base document. I'd like to take the parts of it that we know are going to come out because they'll go in, let's say, the land use section, or they'll go in the open space section.
Could we not accomplish that in a workshop?
Not my comments. It's fine. If there's 3 votes, let's not do this.
All right. Well,
I just don't want it to be the base document. I have no problem with Appendix A, B, and C. I think that's very exciting, especially C. I just didn't want it to be the base document. But you know what? Doesn't matter, Steve. I just asked if you could separate it.
I've moved to separate the 3, and Mr. Chair, with that discussion, why don't we vote 1, 2, and 3 as they've been proposed, and then if any fails, we can have further discussion on how to modify it.
All right. Does the second comply with that request?
Yes.
All right. Then taking, well, first of all, I want to make certain that everybody understands that the public hearing is closed on this. We're taking this to a vote. We're voting on the item number 1 to include as a separate agriculture and forestry element, or include a separate agriculture and forestry element in the general plan update. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, that portion of the motion passes on a 4-0, 1 absent. Item number 2, direct staff to utilize the submitted draft agriculture and forestry element as the base document for preparing a final agriculture and forestry element. All in favor of that motion say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Okay, that motion passes on a 3-1, 1 absent.
And then let me read the language from the third piece, which is to direct staff to continue to update and consult with the Ag Coalition regarding further development of the agricultural element.
All right. Everybody understands that portion of the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Can I attach a rider to that saying it's not warm and fuzzy, it's just a good way of doing business?
Okay, that portion.
I would like to ask that we do schedule a workshop for this.
The whole thing will be workshopped today.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot of those.
Sometime within the next couple months.
Okay. All right, that portion of the motion passes on a 4-0, 1 absent. I've been...
No, there's lots of...
Sorry. Sure is.
I've been withholding my comments on this until now. We've passed this thing, and congratulations on that. As you've heard me say before, I have a sensitive spot in my heart for ag elements. I helped write one in the county that I lived in before I got here. One of the advantages, the overwhelming advantage, in my mind, of having a separate ag element or a separate water element or a separate economic element is that you can, what my objective would be just to immediately upon adoption of our a general plan, to establish a general plan update committee that would be made up of 2 supervisors, 2 members of the Planning Commission, 2 members of the Ag community, and 2 members of the Health and Human Services, and we would always be working on an element of the general plan. It would never get as 20-year-old or 30-year-old stale as it is now. And having these separate elements, in my mind, facilitates that you can take it, and that is your charge for the next year, is to work on a revision of this newly adopted ag element, if necessary. It makes wonderful sense to me, and it's not an original thought because it's done by many surrounding counties. Just as a suggestion, as I was reading through this, the suggestion to the committee that you have the objectives to protect agriculture lands from adjoining incompatible uses. I know, as I was reading through there, I know what the intent was, is to separate the dwelling portions of new conversion or converted properties, keep them 200 feet or 100 feet away from the ag uses. But it really isn't clear, the language there isn't clear and concise enough for me. If you would revisit that and say that if it's it talks about a setback, but it doesn't call it a building setback. If your intent is to have residential uses, specifically houses, separated back 200 feet, then say it. And I like the fact that you are also being wise to say that if there is a barn on this newly created 5-acre parcel, that it could go back within that 200-foot setback. The other thing that I would like for you to look at is the physical size of a 5-acre parcel. If it's a square parcel, is 466 feet on a side. If the setback is truly 200 feet, then you only have a usable little bit over 2 acres, and that may be exactly what you intend, but think about the physical, how it looks on the ground when you're making these, what may be an arbitrary decision about, it ought to be 200 feet. But think about what it does to the configuration of that parcel. So with that final comment, congratulations, and thank all of you for being here. I appreciate your efforts. Thank you. We've had a request for a short break. How long would you like?
5 minutes.
5-minute break. Thank you very much. Okay, we're reconvening for item number 13. This is discussion and possible action regarding a minute order upholding the findings and the recommendations of the Administrative Hearing Board in Code Compliance Case number 09-11 regarding Allen and Pratantip. That's a wonderful word, Pratantip Ladson. This is a code compliance issue, and good morning, Todd.
Good morning, Todd Barr with Code Compliance. This particular case started, or at least I started working on it back in February. What originally happened is that permits were obtained for a large metal structure and an accompanying electrical. Those permits were allowed to expire without the required inspections. There were several attempts to contact the property owner, and he did not respond. At that point, I believe there was a third notice of violation in writing on May 14th. Administrative citation was issued and a hearing held on May 28th, 2009.
The building is up. And
the building is up, yes.
It just won't allow you to complete. The permit expired, and so there's been no final for CO.
Correct. There's been no inspection since foundation. Yes.
And you got no response.
No response.
Did he show up at the hearing?
He did show up at the hearing. He was supposed to be back at the office the next day, and I haven't seen him since. So.
Can I just ask? But it said it valid permits by August 1. There's still time.
He's still got some time, yes.
So then, are you asking for
just asking
just in case, or
yeah,
to uphold the findings?
We would adopt this provisionally if they do not come into compliance with your previous with the hearings recommendations, is that
Yes.
correct?
In this particular case, I'm just asking that we uphold the findings and recommendations of the hearing board, which would allow him actually until the 1st go ahead and get permits.
Will he get a notice that this action has occurred that might provoke his memory to get something done here?
Yes, I've posted things on the property because he said he's not home a lot and he doesn't pick up his mail at the address that he provided in the assessor's inquiry. So what I do is go down and post the letters on the property to notify him, and I'll go down again before the 1st. I'd rather he just come in and finish up. It'd be easier for me.
He left no phone numbers or anything for people to...
No, he didn't leave his phone number.
So the reason he was at the hearing is because you posted it on the property?
He finally got something that was posted on the property, yes. But his comment there also was that he's not on the property very often, so we wanted to give him plenty of time, plenty of chances. So we will go back down and post again before the 1st so that he knows what he needs to do.
Okay, Todd, I have a question on this. This is not in my district, but I have driven down this road before. And is there a metal building that is in contention here, but there's also a dwelling on?
There's a dwelling on the property, yes.
Okay, so aren't there CCNRs in this subdivision that would prevent a big metal building on the property? It looks like it must be, what, acre and a half, 2 acre parcel, or not quite that big?
I do not know if there are actually CCNRs in that subdivision.
We don't enforce them
No,
anyway.
I would not enforce the CCNRs. That would just the county code.
Okay.
They would
All right.
have to take him to court on the subject matter if it's not.
Yeah.
Let's keep waiting.
I'll move to uphold the recommendations of the hearing. I want to make sure that he gets this posted on his property at least a week before the 1st, when his time is up.
I'll go down there today.
Okay.
All right?
Okay, your motion was to uphold the hearing board recommendations and...
Yes.
Okay. We have a second on that?
I'll second. Go ahead.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none, passes on a 4-0-1. Okay. All right, the next item 14, discussion possible action, minute order upholding the findings and recommendations of the Administrative Hearing Board in code compliance case number 0909. This is regarding Jose and Tamu Pina. Todd, what is the report on
This case has some similarities with the last one and involves the Rossetti's building in Wallace. That's been around for quite some time. Apparently, the Pinas purchased this from the family that owned it since the 1930s. And anyway, this case started with a stop work order. Apparently, there was some structural remodeling being done on the building, which was noticed by one of the inspectors. And eventually, Mr. Pina did submit some plans. It was for a kitchen remodel and remodel the old dance hall in the back and some bathrooms and things like that. Those plans were returned to him for corrections, and since that time, he's never resubmitted those plans with the requested corrections. The problem is that there have been some modifications to the structure that could affect the safety of the building. And so, like I said, some stuff has already been done, so it's as built. We need to get some type of plan in, and I suggested to Mr. Pena at the administrative hearing that we do this, that he could do this remodel in phases, which he seemed to want to do. I actually went down and spoke to him the following day, and since that time, he hasn't contacted us or resubmitted any type of plans, either by phone or in writing. So I'd just like to ask that we uphold the recommendations and findings of the Administrative Hearing Board.
This is Rossetti.
Yes.
So he was doing modifications to the cooking, the kitchen area, which is not, they're occupying just the bar area.
Occupying just the bar area this
And
time.
they have like a flea market in the back area of the property.
Yes, and what they call the dance hall in the back, right?
Right. And so this does not affect any of those areas. The area he was working on, or does the modifications that you spoke of affect the entire building? You were talking about structural deficiencies that may occur.
If you just go past the bar, the first modification is a wall in there. I don't know what he's done with that since I was down there, but I told him he either need to put it back or submit some type of remodel plan so that it could be inspected. And also in the back, they've taken walls out and moved walls around. And you're right, they aren't using that kitchen area at this point, but the facts are that they've done some remodeling and affected the structure of the building.
So load-bearing walls were...
Yes,
as far
anytime
as you know,
as far as I know, yes.
And the recommendation... Again, he asked till August 1st.
Yes. And if he'll just contact me, we can put it off a little bit further. We're pretty easy to work with.
And Mr. Pena doesn't live here, though, does he?
I believe he lives in Elk Grove.
Yeah, he lives in
But he has, I've seen him.
Contact, phone number or address to contact him with?
Yes, I do. I've got the address. Well, and if I can catch him, I can actually try and catch him down there, too, at the building. I believe he was there last week.
That's all the questions I have. I'll move to uphold the findings.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to uphold the findings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes on a 4-0-1. Okay, we're down to item 14, discussion and possible action regarding a minute order upholding the findings and recommendations of the Administrative Hearing Board in Code Compliance Case 0905.
Okay, this particular case originated by a complaint from a citizen in October of 2008. The first time that it went to the Administrative Hearing Board, by chance, a person that is familiar with the property, which is actually the current owner's ex-wife, showed up for a different case. So we continued it to give her some time to try and get a hold of him and get personal items out of it, things like that. But there is a lot of junk and debris on the property. There's 2 structures that are dilapidated and off and on being inhabited by vagrants. We actually found some pretty scary stuff when we went up there last time. So in this case, I would actually, and I did mention this to the hearing board when we were there, is that I was going to ask the Board of Supervisors to modify their recommendation in that code compliance be allowed to summarily abate the violations that are on the property because of the fire hazards that were noted and the inhabitants of the vagrants.
Couple of questions for you, Todd. When you say scary, are you referring to drug paraphernalia and other things that may involve the meth trade?
Yeah, paraphernalia and basically using the floor of the structure for an ashtray, things like that.
This record shows that we've had a hard time reaching the Czech family or
yes,
whoever might represent them.
Yes.
I always worry that you may recall the one where the official person was in Colorado and
yes,
we were sending it to another place. I'm wondering whether there's have you done any search for tax or other records that would show where the current whereabouts might be? I just want to make sure we don't have another one of those. If we're going to do summary abatement, I want to make sure we've done everything we can with the information present in the county to track the people.
I spoke with his ex-wife, who said that the last thing she knew, he was in prison, and she wanted nothing to do with property. So that's kind of about as far as I can go with it.
Well, if we know what prison, we've at least got an address.
Well, not exactly. I haven't figured out which one.
Right. Well, again, I want to make sure that regardless of where the person is or what they've done, I want to make sure that in every case where we do summary abatement or fast action, that the people be warned of such and have at least the last opportunity to come into correction. If they were in fact incarcerated, chances are they didn't know they had a hearing if we didn't send the mail there. And I'm wondering whether we would have the capacity to track that down and make sure that the proper notice is delivered.
I can talk to a couple people probably and do that. We didn't actually know where he was until after the hearing occurred. It didn't quite fall together in sequence.
So does it make sense to bring this back on a future meeting after he's had a chance to?
Well, I'm sure that Todd is bringing this as a summary abatement because he's concerned about the safety and condition of the property and the activities going on there. And I think that's a legitimate reason to move faster than normal. But I also think equally important is that our notice to the owner is accomplished with full due diligence and that we track the person down, if at all possible, with the information available to us.
It kind of reminds me of a case we had on Upper Moran. And so I think I would ask counsel, if the owner is in prison, the owner isn't going to come, we have a hazard, what if we demolish the buildings and the owner, who happens to be inaccessible to come to the hearing, says, well, now I'm going to sue the county.
Right.
That's the only thing I care about. Otherwise, I would just say, let's move on it.
Well,
if counsel thinks
I have a second concern, which is that so far all our information comes from somebody who claims to be an ex-spouse, not a current one. And while I have no ex-spouses myself, I have understood that there are some occasions in which there's not goodwill between former partners, and that this may or may not be accurate. So I think it would be good for us to check.
I was hoping to get a little more assistance there than I did, yes.
Yeah, sounds like it.
I guess I'd like to see.
I look at the packet. Todd's given very adequate legal notice. I don't think there's any liability beyond that. If he feels there's an imminent threat of safety, then I think the board is certainly entitled to move forward on it, as opposed to this sort of anecdotal report of somebody being in prison. So I think it's up to the board and Todd's recommendation as to how you want to proceed.
Let me try to craft a motion and see whether this suits your fancy. What I would propose is that we take Todd's recommendation of a summary abatement, that we make that contingent on a final effort to make direct contact with the information that we have, based on information we have, and that given a reasonable amount of time up to your discretion of continued non-response, that we move to summary abatement.
Okay. You heard the motion. Do you have a second?
And that would be to adopt the findings, but change with that change.
Correct. Okay.
Are there any other questions that I could answer?
No, my feeling is if it's appropriate and there's been legal notice, let's move. What I'm hearing you say is let's do some more contact work.
One last time, based on the information that came after the hearing.
I think I know a guy that can probably help us out in a really short period of time.
A cellmate? A cellmate? A former cellmate?
I probably shouldn't say
easy to track.
That's okay. Hey, you're right. I apologize for that comment.
I would like to see a time frame before I could second it.
All right. Well, my time frame was based on Todd's judgment, but if you wish another time frame, let me know what you would approve, and I'll adopt it in the motion.
Within 2 weeks? Is that plenty of time?
That's plenty of time.
All right, 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Fine with that? I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes on a 4-0-1 absent. Okay, going on to, this is another code compliance thing. This is a minute order upholding, requesting a minute order upholding the findings and recommendations of the Administrative Hearing Board for Wendy K. Love Dariman.
Yeah, it is.
Fresh air.
Is this property?
This is in District 5. It's a KOA
Yes,
campground.
that's one of Russ's.
This is a new KOA campground.
Oh, really?
Actually, this one turned out pretty good. So, it did take, it started in February 2009. I got the wrong case out here. Hang on. But anyway, it started, let's see, here it is.
Well, this is the one where the illegal camping stopped.
Yeah, it actually stopped as of the date of the hearing.
Right.
They've now vacated the property. Everything's gone. All we're doing is, like I said, just coming to uphold the findings and recommendations of the hearing board, which recommended that the fine be dismissed. All we'd be assessing here is administrative costs or the cost of the department it took. That wouldn't be assessed except for the fact it took the administrative citation and bringing them to a hearing to finally get them to comply with county code.
Okay, Russ, I'll make the motion on behalf of Supervisor Thomas.
And I'll second that.
Okay, we've had a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes on a 4-0-1. Okay, the next item on our agenda is number 17. This is discussion and possible action regarding a resolution adopting an amendment to the professional services agreement for operation and maintenance of the Calaveras transit system, brought to us by Public Works. Hello, Jamie.
Good morning, Jamie Azervan, Department of Public Works. Due to a significant reduction in state funding, we are looking at a $430,000 operating shortfall for fiscal year 09-10 if we maintain our existing services. State transit assistance has been completely eliminated, and our sales tax revenue continues to decline. So our operating budget has been reduced by 40%. Our recent short-range transit plan update, which was conducted by LSE Transportation Consultants, produced service alternatives that would address the shortfall while also increasing the system efficiency. So in June, the board approved a recommended service plan, which is reflected in the contract amendment before you. If you have any questions, I can go ahead and take those.
Supervisor Walensky.
One of the best spoofs on futility occurred in the movie Monty Python and the Holy Grail, when he was trying to cross the bridge, and there was a person with a sword on the other side trying to prevent that, lopped off each limb as he kept on trying to cross the bridge, and wound up with nothing but a talking head saying he was still going to cross the bridge. I worried that our transit system, at least in some places, including most of my district, is now at that point where there is not the capability of the level of service that would be able to have enough critical mass to be successful. And I wonder what your thoughts are about this. We are responding to cuts that we have no say over, so there's not a lot of fiscal options unless we charge $20 a trip or something. But can you give me a sense of the future if we're cutting ourselves to this level of
Well, what I
service?
can tell you is it's been hit all over. I'm not receiving too many complaints, but I'm receiving them down the line. And so your district definitely isn't the only, everybody's hurting.
I'm aware.
We recently found out that the Third Appellate Court found it unlawful, the state taking our state transit assistance. So now the state is going to appeal it at the Supreme Court, but it looks like we might get our state transit assistance back, which would, I think we received $181,000 last year. So that, I can tell you, is potentially in the future. When that's going to happen, I don't know. As with all the state funding, it changes from one day to the next, but it does look promising that we'll receive some of our funding back. So.
Is it possible that some areas have fallen below the level of service that where recovery would even be possible after a couple of years of this situation? And I'm wondering whether that would trigger a strategic discussion at this moment to maybe look for other types of funding and other types of services. I know the current funding that we get can't do a dial-a-ride or subsidize a taxi or get people moving in different ways, or encouraging carpools or maybe even a community car in a small rural town that delivers people. But certainly not with the current funding. We have to get buses and we have to keep a bus system. But does the department consider, at the point of loss of critical mass in any one area, moving to a different paradigm?
We're in preliminary discussions with Amador Regional Transit. We're working with our neighboring counties. They recently hired a new transit manager, and that's on my list of things to do within the next few weeks, is to talk and really think out of the box and how could we form partnerships at this time, because they're also having to reduce a good chunk of their service as well. So we are not stopping. We're continually looking for funding. Unfortunately, right now, the capital funding is just rolling in, but operating, for transit. But unfortunately, there's not much operating for public agencies. I have been in contact with several nonprofit organizations, and we're working with them, and I've encouraged them to contact our Council of Government staff as our regional transportation planning agency, so we can work together to develop potentially innovative remedies to this. So we are working.
Yeah, it looks like it's time to do that. Certainly throughout my section of the upcountry, people are waiting 4 or 5 hours for transfers. There's no possibility that that's going to be inefficient, or that people will pay for that experience. So my hope is we can really rethink this in a short turnaround so that we can resume some form of service for people who have no transportation themselves.
So, Steve, you're asking us to open it up again to relook at the route changes?
No, I recognize that there's no way, there is not the funding necessary to do the kind of transportation that's required in my district for people who don't have cars and still have services that they have to acquire down here in San Andreas or other places, or shopping in other towns. So the question right now is not so much can we rearrange the deck chairs on an already sunk ship, but can we come up with a new way of getting people from place to place? And maybe it's volunteer center kind of things. Maybe it's dial-a-ride. Maybe it's a subsidizing a public-private partnership with a local nonprofit to get people around. Maybe a youth and seniors kind of effort. We already have buses that are riding around that are with ARC and with various other organizations. Can we find the necessary combination to actually serve the public rather than go through the motions and wind up short of the mark and failed and then accused of failure? I want to really acknowledge the moment here and try to figure it out.
You can be confident that I'm in constant contact with the social service organizations. Everybody's hurting right now, and so that's our number one goal, is to form the partnerships, because even with our recent partnership with Tuolumne and Amador, we were able to preserve a good chunk of our service. So definitely we're working on that.
There were some Prop 63 monies for transportation. As I understand it, we've laid off our transport workers, but if that money is still around, it might be nice to preserve that.
Okay, any other questions of Jamie? Jamie, this new contract that we're talking about with LSC, well, they were the consultants, but are the people that run the buses for us?
Yes, MB Transportation.
MB Transportation, okay. I read an article recently that Tuolumne County, they were running their transit system with MB, but this year they sent out requests for proposals in store transportation, got the contract.
Correct.
Are we?
We are obligated to fulfill the remaining 2 years of our contract with MB. I do want to point out that Storer was not the lowest responsive bidder. They chose Storer for a number of reasons, of which I'm not 100% confident of them, but they came in the middle out of, I think, 7 bids. So that's one thing, that they weren't the lowest responsive bidder. So I don't know that that would help us with our level of service. But they are going to be working with me and on the steering committee to select our next contractor when that time comes, which will begin that process in 1 year.
Okay. Thank you.
If there's no public comment, I'll approve the attached resolution regarding the amendment to the service agreement.
Okay, gentlemen, we have a motion.
Second.
Okay. Moved and seconded to approve the resolution. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes on a 4-0-1. Okay, going on to item 18. Discussion and possible action about the resolution to formally adopt the 2009 Short-Range Transit Plan update.
Good morning, Jamie Azervan once again. The Short-Range Transit Plan is a 5-year planning document that's required by the Federal Transit Administration in order to be eligible for funding through the program. Calaveras Transit's original document was completed in 2004, so the mandatory 5-year update was completed this year and was sponsored by the Council of Governments. The draft Short-Range Transit Plan was presented to you on June 2nd and to the board on June 2nd and was formally adopted by the Council of Governments, our regional transportation planning agency, on June 3rd. And staff is now recommending that the Board of Supervisors also formally adopt the plan to ensure that we remain eligible for funding through the Federal Transit Administration. And I'm available to take questions if you have anything on that. There were very few minor changes since the plan that you originally reviewed. But if you do have any questions, I'm available.
Any questions?
Well, I'm going to support this, but in the next year, between this and when any of the detailed application and implementation of any of this comes up, I really want the discussion that I previously suggested to happen in a very strong way. Again, I don't want to sound like my colleague who's missing today. Who's expressed consistent concerns about transit. What I'm concerned about is a little different. I'm very committed to public transit, and I think that there has to be a way for people to get in democracy from place to place. It's a fundamental underpinning of our ability to remain coherent as a society. And what I find is that when people get locked into their towns, despite great needs outside of them, or certainly a need to be in some kind of contact elsewhere, that really diminishes us as a society. So there's different underpinnings and different philosophical bases for this discussion. But it does ultimately get to the same place. If we're spending money and not getting people from place to place, that's a problem for me. And we've arrived there now in my district. Maybe they're not calling downtown anymore, but I'm getting lots of feedback on this latest set of changes, and it's just not working anymore for the folks in my district. So, and I'm pretty sure that's
true for
all the way around. I'm not just suggesting that this is a District 2 issue, and I'm not just suggesting it's a Calaveras issue. But we have the wherewithal to do things differently if circumstances around us change. And I think it's time that we begin to get deeper into that discussion. So that's just a quick summary of my take on this. I'm voting, I will move to adopt this. We have no other choice. We have to continue to ask for whatever funds might be available. At the same time, I think we do need to begin to seek funds that are not part of this arrangement, but might provide other services more specific to a rural circumstance such as we have. Anyway, so the motion is there.
I'll second it.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes on 401. Thank you, Jenny. Okay, the next item, number 19, discussion and possible action regarding the resolution authorizing the execution of a professional service agreement with Golder Associates in the amount of $160,665 to provide engineering design for Phase 1 closure of the Rock Creek landfill. This is brought to us by Public Works. Hello, Jonathan.
Hello. I'd like to just present to you today the partial final closure design phase for Phase 1 of the Rock Creek landfill, identifying construction to occur in fiscal year 10-11 at a cost of $160,665 as presented in your staff report.
Any questions of Jonathan?
The estimated cost of 2.7, that's inclusive of this, I assume. Is that correct, or is this is just the first phase of that?
It's inclusive.
Is that number holding in your estimate?
Yes, sir. That's accurate for our current estimate.
Thanks.
I'll move this resolution.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Any further discussion? If not, asking for the question, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and we have none in opposition, so it passes on a 4-1-0. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
401.
Thank you.
You didn't have anything to say, Rob?
Nothing further, no thank you.
Okay. Good to see you.
Well, you're always welcome here, regardless.
All right. Now, that was 19. We've had a little bit of a shuffle here that I haven't had a chance to discuss with you. In talking with County Council Jones and CAO Lawton, there was a proposal that we have a closed session prior to talking about the adopting the budget. So that's my recommendation. What's your pleasure?
Is the basis of this so that we can review the labor discussions that might inform our decision on the budget?
That would be our hope, yes.
Okay, well, I'd certainly support that.
Okay, so in view of that, we would be taking item number 25, our closed session that we announced earlier this morning, and doing that now, coming back in a short period of time to continue the agenda that we would be taking up. Okay, adopting, that would be item number 20 at that time. 21, just for information purposes, the resolution authorizing the changes in the position control list. We will not be discussing that today. It's not appropriate to discuss it today. It's my understanding. Is that a fair representation?
Yes.
Okay, so 21 is not going to work. Okay, so we...
Could I suggest that we might complete item 20 and possibly item 24? Or excuse me, it's item 23 now. 23. Yes. And yeah, we used to, it's numbered 20 on my thing. It's 23, the Domestic Animal Advisory Committee and EMS appointments, as well as correspondence and matters of concern.
There were no names.
Yes, there were.
Yes, there were.
It's Robin Bunch, for the MSOC, and
didn't have one. That's all.
we have in the attachment it is Sharon Vidal.
Oh, I didn't have any online.
Anyway,
So-
would that suit the chair to complete those items?
I think so. Okay,
That's what I have.
Steve, could I see you?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Robin's been serving around the MSOC for 4 years.
She can join with Steve's.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
she's my appointee too.
so you make a motion.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Robin Bunch to the Emergency Medical Oversight Committee. This is actually a reappointment. She has been serving for the last term, and it expired. She now wants to re-up.
Want to do them both?
Yeah, can we do them both? Just make a motion that we accept both of them?
Okay, and Sharon Vidal for the Domestic Animal Advisory Committee as well. So it would be both appointments in one motion.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes on a 4-0-1.
Mr. Chair, if you would indulge me, while Janice is here, I wanted to make an announcement. The board knows that a lawsuit was filed against the county, Guy Myers versus Calaveras County. It consisted of a very broad-based challenge to our RIM fee, challenge to the procedure, to notice issues, to the selection of roads designated for improvement, challenges to other language in the statute, in the ordinance. Janice tried that case for the county in this court, a year, 2 years ago? 2 years ago, and won the case on all issues. The plaintiff, Mr. Myers, through his counsel, Mr. Foley, took it up on appeal. It's been on appeal. It's been fully briefed. Janice has worked very hard on this case, and I could not be more pleased to announce that the appellate court has ruled today that the county has prevailed on all issues. So that case, for all intents and purposes, is over. There are requests for rehearings and further requests, but in my judgment, they'll go nowhere. So this is a very good result for the county, and I'm very pleased to report it to you. Janice did a very good job.
Congratulations, Janice.
Yes. Thank you, Janice.
Spend it wisely.
Well, spend it as per the documents and the plan that was litigated.
Okay, so where does that put us? We're going to do review of correspondence at this point.
Can I just, again, because we have staff here, if we're going to do closed session before we do the budget items, and it's getting to be 10 and 12, maybe we should just set a time to come back, 1:30 or 2. I don't know how long the closed sessions will last.
That's the
Yes.
special.
What do you think, Russ?
I'd like to give us plenty of flexibility and make it 2.
Okay.
All right. So once we finish with the review of correspondence and reports of various matters, we'll be going into closed session and coming back for the final discussion on the budget. Is that what I understand? All right. Okay. We'll see staff members back at 2 o'clock then. But
The
Tom,
closed session will take place now.
now? Yeah.
We're not gonna, okay.
Okay.
Correspondence? You can do that
And
now or
yes,
later.
we'll do the correspondence now, but Tom, could you just be available on your phone, and we'll make arrangements to have lunch with you. So.
What should you do the closed session? I mean, you're going to do the
Correspondence?
correspondence, I'm right.
Okay, well, but we're going to go do the closed session after lunch? Is that what I'm hearing? That's fine with me. That's good.
You could do the correspondence
and do the closed session anytime you like between now and 2 o'clock. It's up to you. We just need to make sure staff knows where they got to be and what.
Well, the only staff member that you need for the closed session, or we need for the closed session, is Francine. Is that correct? And Jim? All right. What I would like to do is do the correspondence now, get that out of the way, go have lunch, and then come back as soon as we can to do the closed session and be back here at 2 o'clock. But we've lost a supervisor. Okay, could we start with Supervisor Walensky on the correspondence, please?
Yes, I have a 4 o'clock meeting today, which I may or may not make for the Behavioral Health Job Committee. I have the Mother Lode Job Training Board in Sonora tomorrow at 2, and I will be on Thursday night leaving for Hayfork on a National Forest Foundation funded trip to the project that most resembles the CHIPS project here in this county. They've been running for 16 years, and they're probably the most advanced project in California. That's in Trinity County. So it's a community similar to ours that lost its timber mills and is trying to rebuild an economy around different value-added products. So we're going to actually do on-site visits to all of their operations on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And the CHIPS board is headed up there for that. And one other thing. I got a call from Heidi Sanborn. She's with the California Product Stewardship Council, and they're making their proposal for taking things out of the waste stream. And of course, we've got compliance issues that we're trying to work on. Has been adopted and recommended by RCRC, CSAC, and NACO. They are on a tour of boards of supervisors, particularly in rural counties across California, and offer a quick presentation that we could do as a study session or as part of our board meeting, and are asking us if we have any time in August to be able to accommodate them. The presentation by the council would be on what they call extended producer. Boy, I can't even read my own writing. And anyway, the goal here is to have producers take responsibility for the things that would require recycling, that you build that into
We've been
the process.
discussing that
Yes,
in the solid waste task force.
And I thought this might be a good thing to accept and have a discussion.
Well, I mean, it's not when we were already dealing and been supporting that.
Mm-hmm.
I would, and I think it's a good idea, except I'd like them to work through Tom Garcia.
Okay.
Because
shall I simply give her a number to you?
He could,
or Tom?
Oh, is this going to take the monkey off your back and put it on my back?
I'm delighted to. Yeah, that looks like a volunteer to me.
So
it does fall properly in your domain.
But I mean that's okay. I mean, because we've been working on this for a couple of years.
They're the ones making the presentations, and Heidi is responsible for that. So she was hoping for a call from either you or Tom or somebody from the county.
I mean, I just think we should, as a courtesy, work through the solid waste.
All right. I wanted to check and see whether the board had any objection to it.
Well, I think it's real interesting, except instead of it just being information, I'd like to see some action.
Well, she has a resolution that she'd be happy to share that other counties are adopting, and that was already been adopted by NACO, CSAC, and RCRC, but so we could present it for action.
Well, a resolution's just, that's not action. It's just, we support it. I mean, if we want to take it a step further, like we don't want plastic bags, like some cities have outlawed, or we don't want certain things in the county, and then we send it back to the task force, and they'll send it to us, and the room will be packed, and we might not do anything, but barring that, a resolution, like water bottles and
I thought it'd be just good to hear what other counties are doing, and
sounds like
No, no, no.
separate elements.
Sounds like a separate element to me. But no, that's fine. I'll give her a call.
Seems like
but-
you're just driving here.
Hey, but Steve, I'll go to Tom if you don't have a problem with that.
not at all. I just got the call, and
Just
I thought
as a
I'd make people
courtesy.
aware of that.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Supervisor Toffenelli.
I have a 1 o'clock meeting in Sacramento for the Cosco Creek with Corps of Engineers. I'll be attending. That's at 1 o'clock.
Tomorrow.
Today?
Tomorrow. Today at 1?
Yeah, it's a doomed venture if it's today. That's for sure.
I'll see you. I'll be meeting with Dan Reardon with Hospice, Calaveras Amador Hospice tomorrow at 3:30. And then I'll be filling in for Russ at the LAFCO meeting on Monday at 6 o'clock. And that's all I have.
Okay, Supervisor Callaway.
I have Calaveras Public Power Agency this week. That's my only board appointment. I'm going to try and go to the Visitors Bureau function on Thursday. I'm not sure that I'll make it, but it's down in your area. If you can
Sure.
go.
Sure. When is it?
It's Thursday at 5:30. I've gone to almost everything but about 2 over the last 3 years. It's at the Llama Ranch, I think.
Oh, yes. I know where it's at.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I will be attending the meeting in Sacramento with Supervisor Toffenelli at 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. And let's see if this, okay, and I want to remind my fellow board members that I will be gone on vacation starting Saturday and coming back the following Friday. So Supervisor Callaway will be swinging the gavel next week. So look out.
That's it. It's like, I'll say, on motion, you don't make it, it's like, didn't pass. Move on.
All right.
Okay, well, wear your power suit, okay?
Okay.
I
You
don't,
could hide the gavel, that would be...
Yeah.
I don't use a gavel. I call me Terry Bailey.
I thought that was Anita Khrushchev.
Another lively
She
day.
did it one day. Yeah, it was, but
Who did?
Terry Bailey did it one day when she was chair.
Are you going to this Mexico trip that you didn't take
No.
previously that you
no.
canceled?
Actually, I'm going to visit my daughter in Portland, so
Oh.
You going to go to Mexico too?
Later in September. The my daughter has made arrangements for the guy that does the Nova Science Now. So it's just Tyson. Neil deGrasse Tyson is a preeminent TV personality that does the Nova series, and he's going to do one of her science pubs in Portland. So I want to drive up and take part in that. So, or not take part of it.
So you're going to be a TV science experiment?
I could be. Yeah. I could easily do that. So, did you didn't want to have any comments about your tour of Lake Tulloch on Sunday? Or, so?
Oh, yeah, well, now I was calling first mate earlier when you we took a tour of, I attended a gala event.
Gala?
Well, it was a floating platform that Merle Holman put together that had rows of tables. It was connecting platforms, and it accommodated about 125 people, and it was jettisoned around by a pontoon boat in the rear around the lake, and it had other pontoon boats tied to the side of it that were just tied onto it as not their motors running in a guy, and just like a party atmosphere tied on type thing. And It was quite a scene. Just about everybody on that lake stopped what they were doing when this thing floated by. And there was an attempt to get under the bridge that was abated when one of the boats that was tied on the side almost crashed into the rocks. But it was quite a scene, and it was a good time.
Yeah, I'm glad you were there. Mr. Lawton, do you have anything to report?
Pasadena.
Well, just one more thing on this rim fee decision. I've just got a copy of the opinion, and looking through it, there's one sort of a compliment to this board that I might read to you. The context is the claim that the board acted hastily in selecting the roads to be included in the rim fee, and the court writes the following: the record does not show that the Board of Supervisors acted hastily in adopting ordinance number 2777, the rim fee. To the contrary, a public hearing process was conducted and worked as intended. It resulted in a deliberate evolution of projects to be funded by the rim fee. The court says the system worked.
Thank you. Carol, do you have anything for us? No. All right, so we are temporarily adjourned. We'll be back at 2 o'clock.
It's going to be past the time.
And with that, I'll just see, well, we'll be back here at 2 o'clock. We'll try to get into county council chambers at 1. Is that?
1:15, it's 12 now.
I would like to call our meeting back to order. Sorry we're late again. Apologize for that. It just seems like we can't get it all done. Okay, we are currently at agenda item number 21. Yeah. Actually, it's 20. This is a discussion and possible action regarding resolution to adopt the 2009-2010 preliminary budget. And this says the auditor controller is going to be doing this for us. So. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. This is the culmination of so far what had occurred during the budget hearings that is before you today. And typically you, in one action, approve all the 3 resolutions. Did you guys have, and I know there was some mention of the closed sessions, or if we should be entertaining something different, or without those comments, I assume we're going straight forward with these 3.
Well, Russ recommended that we be open 1 day a week.
Okay.
I thought it'd be fun if
Is
we
that
just worked 1 day.
Saturday?
And it wasn't Tuesdays.
That was a closed session thing you reported out. I'm shocked. But that's true. I thought that would be one way we could solve our budget problems, just open 1 day a week. But didn't get enough votes. Anyway, I think that Linda is asking if we're just considering the 3 recommendations here. Is that what I'm hearing, Linda? We have nothing else to talk about now, although there seems to be some what appears to be some favorable movement on some labor units that will be helpful to save some positions. That's what we had, the sentiments that we had expressed last Thursday. So.
Right, and I just wanted to point out that those adjustments can be made at final budget, for the variances, and that even if we would have adopted the budget last week, that wouldn't have stopped our progress in operations, nor would it hinder, our final budget process.
Well, I don't think any of us are at all pleased with having to support this. It's preliminary. We're making no changes to what was agreed to last week. And I'm tired of waking up with a sore jaw every morning because of the tension of what we're doing. And running into employees who were directly impacted and services to the public. But without beating this up, I move the approval of the 3 resolutions as presented because we're not going to be modifying any of them today.
We have a motion.
Do I ask for lack of a second?
No, I will second this, but I also want to add my comments to the moment. Obviously, the services and the question of what kind of a county we are and what we're going to be doing for public service hinges now almost entirely on decisions that are being made by members of various bargaining units. And I think it would be fair at this moment to convey the desire of this board that people look carefully at this moment for what it is. We do have histories and we have a lot of water under the bridge, but right now it's the realities of this economic moment, the realities of what's happened at the state should be uppermost on our mind as we try to figure out how best to continue services and what we can all do toward that end. I really hope that all bargaining units might respond effectively to this board's outstretched hand to try to mitigate these layoffs so that services can be provided. We've given clear outline on what the economics of that is. We have given great flexibility as to how that would be met, and we're very hopeful that that message has been well received, or at least received accurately, notwithstanding comments that we heard in this morning's public comment. I hope if anybody's listening that they will make their wishes known to their representatives and be involved in finding solutions here. It's not a moment to look for blame for things past. It is a moment to try to preserve the best we have for the citizens of this county for our future. So I do make the second, but this is in the hopes that we might find effective mitigation of layoffs.
Okay. Thank you, Supervisor Walensky. Anybody else want to make a comment before I ask for the question? Okay, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There are none. The motion passes on a 4-0-1 absent. Thank you, Linda. Okay, that was the balance of our work, our public work this afternoon. We do have one additional closed session concerning a couple of...
That include the air pollution control district?
We're not doing position control today.
No, air pollution control.
The air pollution, we need to act on.
Recess as the board of supervisors will reconvene this evening.
That's why Lockmere is here. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. All right, item number 22. This is a discussion and possible action regarding a resolution to adopt the fiscal year 2009-2010 proposed budget for the Air Pollution Control District. So we will take off our supervisor hats and put on our commissioner's hats for the Air Pollution Control District.
I move this item.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to approve this item. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion passes on a 4-1.
So actually, there's a rider to that motion that I'd like to suggest, which is that Lockmere be forced to stay another year for and that only under those circumstances would the budget be accepted. But yes, I see he's not going with it, so I withdraw the suggestion.
All we'd have to do to keep him is just Supervisor Walensky. We could get him to stay if we put the bus route back to Lodi.
Well,
Linda?
is he talking about that scene?
Sure.
Yes, would you please?
Please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the board and Mr. Chairman. Only comment I have is that no doubt we all are going through some hard times but in the last 15 years I have been here, this is the first year air pollution control district budget will be in green without any county benefits.
Very good.
And no doubt the credit is yours more than the Air Pollution Control Board's. And congratulations and thank you.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, just, have we taken the vote?
Yes.
Yeah. We put proposed budget. How come we don't we're supposed to use that word versus preliminary budget?
Yes.
Yep, that's the term of art.
That's the term for the Budget Act.
Got it. I just, I don't know how many of these I've seen. I probably just picked up on it today. Thank you.
Okay.
Just for your information, the Budget Act has been rewritten over the last 2 years, and next year the terminology changes for the proposed and the final and all of that. So instead of being the final budget, it's going to be the approved budget, because the final budget is not final till the end of the year at June 30th, because you change it every week. Anyway, and then there'll be no more July 20th to pass the budget. I think it changes where it will be just June 30th with no extensions. I think that's another thing that we're changing.
So, but that's only good for cities and counties. That's not good for the state of California.
Right. Yes. They have more than one set of rules.
Thank you.
All right, thank everyone for coming, and we are adjourned. We will be going to a closed session momentarily.
Can I have it here?